We've got a lot of planning to do to get ahead of the game and get our lineup set for week 12. Well, not necessarily, but at least get our waivers in before everyone else does. Let's beat the waiver wire on Fantasy Football Today Express. It's Adam and Dave here. Week 12 has 6 teams on bye: Atlanta, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Jacksonville, New Orleans, and the Jets. What are we going to do, Dave?
Well, the very first thing you should do is before you set your lineup for week 11, set it for week 12, just to get an idea of how many holes you'll have to fill. If you do it now and you get ahead of it now, you can thank your future self later for doing it, because there are some players that I think are easy adds now that the most people in your league aren't even thinking about, and you're just going to beat them to the punch. And it's a good feeling to make that happen. So we'll get into it, but yes, a lot of good players on bye in week 12. Set your lineup for week 12, see how bad it looks. Maybe it doesn't look so bad, then set it for week 11 after that.
Okay, well, I actually went through this exercise yesterday, and I found it difficult to find players who were rostered in less than, say, 65% of leagues who were available that had appeal. But you're better at this than I am. So who did you find at quarterback?
So the two positions that I really struggled with were quarterback and DST, and we'll wrap up with DST. But at quarterback, the only name that I found that really would work was Drake May, because he's got the matchup against the Dolphins. I think that's a good matchup. I think they'll have to throw a lot, and I don't hate him this week against the Rams either. So maybe you're in a situation where you've got just a gigantic question mark at quarterback. You need a guy. Drake May can help you now and maybe even next week. After that, I would put squatters' rights on Anthony Richardson. What if he looks good against the Jets in week 11? Mm-hmm. Now you've got him for week 12. It's against Detroit. I know it's not going to be pretty. He might have to throw more than we'd like. But if he passes the eyeball test in week 11, and we saw Bryce Young pass the eyeball test after he got benched, if he passes, then you'll be happy to have Anthony Richardson, and you know what his upside can do. Will Levis is the low-rent version of Anthony Richardson. Has he passed the eyeball test over the last couple of weeks? Not too bad. But I'd rather have Richardson as of now. Levis plays at Houston in week 12.
Oh, I wish I could tell you to get Daniel Jones or something like that, because they're playing Tampa Bay coming out of their bye, but we don't even know who the quarterback's going to be, and it really doesn't matter. You can't dip into that pool.
If you couldn't get numbers from him against Carolina, you're not going to get numbers from him against Tampa.
Well, Tampa's even worse than Carolina. Tampa Bay gives up the most.
I do not care.
It's such a shame. They have the best schedule. They have the best schedule. Okay, running back. Who are we looking at here?
I think, again, this is a tough list. There are running backs that you can add. The one that I would be Tyjae Spears, and he's already rostered in a bunch of leagues. Just does hit under the threshold. He's got Minnesota this week. He's got Houston next week. I don't really love any of the other running backs, but I'll list them out for you anyway. This is how I have them ranked for week 11. Gus Edwards, Jerome Ford, Zach Charbonnet, Justice Hill, Roshan Johnson, Jaleel McLaughlin, Braylon Allen. Do they all have tough matchups in week 12? Kind of.
Well, Braylon Allen's on a bye, right?
Yes. And then Gus Edwards, like, he's the top name on the list after Tyjae Spears. He's got the Ravens. And I know it's a revenge game and you're hoping that he scores, but he also might have 10 carries for 12 yards without a touchdown. And that would be bad for your fantasy team. Here's a name, though. This is another one. Maybe it's squatters' rights, but Devin Singletary is under the threshold. So maybe he's on the waiver wire in your league. In the event the Giants kind of punish Tyrone Tracy, or maybe they just make it more of a split backfield, Devin Singletary against Tampa. It's not, I know Tampa's run defense, everybody thinks that they're so bad. They haven't been good against the run. Maybe Singletary makes some sense.
One more name for me is Khalil Herbert. I'd like to see if they work him in a little bit more. I just don't think they want to give Zach Moss 20-plus touches Chase Brown 20.
They're not giving Zach Moss 20-plus touches.
20-plus touches every week. So maybe Khalil Herbert. I mean, they went and traded for him. There got to be a reason for it. Maybe he gets 8 to 10 touches or something like that. Maybe he could work near the goal line. It's a dart throw, but it's what you got to do when you're desperate.
Sure.
All right, wide receivers.
Pearsall's at the top of the list for guys that you could start this week. You can find them off the waiver wire. Rashad Bateman's on the list too against Pittsburgh, and he's got I don't know if it's a decent matchup against the Chargers in week 12, but I think the Ravens will throw a lot. That could be a high-scoring game. Christian Watson is someone to speculate on. He's got Chicago this week. He's who does he have in week 12? I wrote down that he's against Green Bay, but obviously that's not. He's at San Francisco. Versus San Francisco.
Home against, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's not going to be necessarily the easiest of matchups, but he could come out of the bye with a bigger role for the Packers. and that's somebody I'd like to have. The other names are gross names. MVS, Nick Westbrook-Akine, Demario Douglas. These are all receivers. Hold on now. These are all receivers that I think you could use this week and potentially next week, but I've got another list. I've got another trick up my sleeve. These are the wide receivers that I think you could stash now and use in week 12, and you might like this list a lot better. Wan'Dale Robinson against the Bucs. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is. Short area target. Could be cheap PPR points. Xavier Legette and Adam Thielen of the Panthers taking on Kansas City. What about Juju Smith-Schuster taking on the Carolina Panthers? We'll see what role he takes if he comes back in week 11. And then 3 other names, Mike Williams, Jalen Coker, Demarcus Robinson. These names are never pretty, but I think those first 3 names, and maybe even the first 4 names that I just gave you, could be answers to the quiz at wide receiver in week 12.
I don't know, man, because I think that Thielen takes away from Legette. Right? It's kind of like I don't know, they have a good matchup coming out of the bye, right?
Well, it's Kansas City. I don't know
Kansas City. Okay, it's good after that. I definitely agree about Wan'Dale. And yeah, like Legette, you could do worse than Legette.
Right.
Maybe you go pick up Rome Odunze or Keenan Allen if they're available. They're about 67% rostered, so he might not even be an option. But Elijah Moore is another guy that's 19% rostered, gets a ton of targets. They do have a tough matchup. They have the Steelers. But, I kind of see him similarly to Wan'Dale Robinson, just with a tougher matchup. All right, let's take a break and come back and talk about tight ends to add, DSTs to add. And if we have time, we'll answer some questions on FFT Express. We are back. Dave, tight ends to add for week 12.
I'm going to skip over the guys that might be good for just week 11 and only week 11. These are guys who I like for week 11 and week 12. Let's start with Cole Kmet against Green Bay in week 11. He's got the Vikings in week 12, Pat Freiermuth, Baltimore in week 11, Cleveland in week 12, Will Dissly, Bengals in week 11, Ravens in week 12, and then Jonnu Smith against the Raiders in week 11, the Patriots at home in week 12. I think we've got some options at tight end that can work as far as bye week replacements go, and maybe even flex plays.
Oh, you're missing one. What about Jatavian Sanders against the Chiefs?
I don't hate it. He's definitely worthy of being on the list, but I wonder if Adam Thielen's return soaks up targets from him. And it's not like he had a ton of targets last game anyway.
No, but it is, the matchup against the Chiefs. All right, DSTs you said was difficult?
I found it to be very difficult. I found only one DST that you could get right now to stash for next week, and it's the Bucs. And I know that the Bucs defense is gross, but they're taking on the Giants, and you know that they're just a mess offensively. But I couldn't find another DST that you could add now, unless you're in a league with like add drops of players and teams that have already played, because then the Commanders would qualify. But DSTs that are rostered under 65% in CBS Sports leagues. But I did compile a list of DSTs that are available in less than 30% of CBS leagues, and maybe one of these DSTs will be out there for you. The Steelers, the Chiefs, the Broncos, and the Eagles. Again, the Eagles, they just got done playing. I don't know if you can pick them up.
Some leagues you can, yeah. But all right, good stuff. I'm going to take a look at the Bucs DST in a lot of leagues, Dave. A few minutes like a minute for questions here. Let's see. Don't really see any.
Wow.
Just a lot
Everyone
of
got their lineups ready to go for week 11.
Would you rather have Worthy or Pearsall?
Pearsall.
Okay. How about Mooney? This is just for week 11. Mooney, Jennings, Tillman, Lamb, Reed, Flowers. Pick 3. Mooney, Jennings, Tillman, Lamb, Reed, Flowers.
Flowers is a must for me. I will go with Mooney if he's active, and I'll pair him with Lamb. And if Mooney somehow isn't active, remember he was pulled from practice on Thursday, so we'll see what he is on Friday. I would go with Lamb and Jennings if there's no Mooney available.
Are the Bucs DST worth picking up if I have to drop players like Tajay Spears?
It comes down to how badly you need a DST for next week. If your main DST is on bye, then you're either dropping that DST or you're dropping Tajay Spears.
And what about Kayshon Boutte as a beat the waiver wire guy?
I don't see it for Boutte.
Okay. That's for
name,
sure. Yeah, it's a good team name, guy. We like that. We'll talk to you on Sunday with another episode of FFT Express. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend.